What could you do to protect your pets if you're sick or injured? My product, Save My Pet ID tag, helps you ensure that your beloved pets are safe and well cared for, even when life isn't what you expect.
Recently, I attended a professional pet conference in Arizona. It featured a stellar lineup of speakers, including today's special guest. I regard him as a man of compassion, and he's here to help us tackle a very emotional topic, pet grief. Please welcome to our show, Scott Campbell. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you.
Pleasure to be here. We don't want tissues being drawn out during this episode, but we are so all joy-filled because many of us have pets in our lives. And so pets do a body good, right, Scott?
Oh, indeed. I think that there's a lot of history where we've shown that animal companionship really bolsters our lives.
Now, what got you into becoming a veterinary chaplain? I believe in all the years I've been a show host, I've never had a veterinary chaplain. I mean, were you on a swing set as a 5-year-old going, when I grow up, I'm going to be a veterinary chaplain? What? Yeah. How did you get here?
Yeah, not at all. So I used to be a practicing hypnotherapist.
Oh, cool.
I got a sense that there was something more going on than just the words that I was weaving in the environment. And I decided that the chaplaincy was something I needed to pursue because I thought that there was more going on.
Yeah.
And then in seminary, I was like, well, what am I going to do with this chaplaincy? I could become a human medicine chaplain or a hospice chaplain, but it really didn't sing for me.
Okay.
And then the idea of public chaplaincy and being involved in the whole animal care interspecies system really sang to me. And so I thought that there'd be organizations out there that I could just fall in place with because this just made a lot of sense.
Yeah, of course.
And there were none. There were zero. And
wow.
So I did a survey and I found that a lot of people were focused who did anything at all in this area were focused on client grief and loss. And makes perfect sense. I think that's low-hanging fruit for any one. Then significant but not huge sliver were actually focused on animal spirituality, which I thought was interesting. And then a teeny tiny sliver was focused on the professionals in animal care themselves. And that was really where I was drawn.
You're trying to fill a void.
Oh, for sure. So I decided, well, somebody needs to create something out of this. And so I created the American Association of Veterinary Chaplains.
How long ago would you say?
I started working on this in 2021, actually.
During COVID. Fun.
Yeah. We got our 501c3 last December, and we opened for membership in the beginning of March. So, and we focused on those 3 pillar communities, the professionals, the animal spiritual selves, and then the clients or the caretakers, human families, however you want to look at it.
And is there a website for it, or how do people find out about it?
Yeah, they can go to AAVCHAP, American Association of Veterinary Chaplains.org.
Okay, make sure AAVCHAP.org.
That's correct.
Okay, I will tattoo that. No, it is. Do you think we have a lot of pet professionals? We have pet sitters, we have veterinarians, groomers, doggy daycare. The industry is multi-billion, but there's a lot of people out there that want to do something to bring out the best in pets. But our dogs, cats, and other companion animals, they don't live forever.
Yeah.
So it sounds like this void you're trying to fill. Can you talk about how you were able to get the word out that, hey guys, if you're hurting or you're looking for some coping skills, our nonprofit is here for you?
Yeah. So this is in its beginning stages. I've been doing this work now for about 3 years at the College of Veterinary Medicine at Washington State University. So I sort of have an in with the population and have been able to do this.
Well, let me just jump in. So just starting at Washington State, who are you dealing with, and what's been a few things that you've been able to accomplish that could be a springboard to a more broader group?
Sure. So basically, I always come back to the 3 pillars.
Okay.
What have I done for this pillar lately? So the most visible aspect of me is going into the waiting room several times a day and sitting down and chatting with everybody there.
Oh, like an ER emergency room or?
It's that kind of feel, but it's not all emergency. We have about 10 to 12 services that receive patients here.
Okay.
From
So people are kind of nervous in the waiting room or sad or anxious, right?
Yeah. Or it could be joyous, right? I mean, people could be here for reproduction, getting their companion inseminated, or they're bringing their companion home after surgery, and it's a take-home day. I love take-home days.
I do too.
Yeah. So it really varies quite a bit. But so that's my most visible aspect. I also spend time every so often heading around the hospital and just poking my nose into the various departments and just saying hi and reminding them that I'm here for them. But we also started some, they're called balance groups for our faculty clinicians. And it's an opportunity for them to explore the emotional aspect of cases rather than the medicine that they focus on all the time, to help them sort of get through those experiences. And then for the patients, it's all about how can we make the experience less anxious for them. So one of the things I did, we have a very large waiting room.
Okay.
Is I actually cordoned off 1/4 of it with a mobile partition to create a quiet corner. So
very good.
There's a visual block for those who are sight reactive. Sound still reverberates pretty significantly, but there's a little less activity going on there. We also have raised tables for our small companions who might feel a little safer if they were 4 feet off the ground instead of on the ground next to a potential predator.
Yes. Kitty cats like everywhere are saying, thank you, Scott.
Indeed. So it really is focusing piecemeal on each of those pillar communities.
Well, let's do the pillar that deals with the waiting room.
Okay.
Let's give me a scenario. Give me an example. Somebody came in, they're a little anxious, something's happening. They don't know what's happening with their pet. They love this pet. How do you approach them? And what are some tips or guidance that you sometimes offer?
Yeah, anxiety is very common. And really, where it's the worst is when they're waiting to hear.
Yeah.
They just don't know. So I kind of walk them through that. I say, even when we get not great news, we have ground to stand on. We have decisions to make, and we have a place to step forward. They may not be where we want to be, but there are things we can do. When we're in the unknown, it's kind of like we're going down the lazy river and we're sort of being buffeted and taken wherever the current takes us, which is very often our very imaginative minds that do that. Mm-hmm. So I also help them find ways of sort of grounding in the present and not spending all their time postulating about possible challenges down the road, and just recognize where you are and whether or not you anticipate correctly where you end up on the shore. The thing is, that's where you are, and you look around and you make a decision as to where to place your next footstep.
Now,
so I really want to ground it for.
Yeah. And for the faculty, it's been reported that of medical professionals, there is a high rate of suicide, higher than normal in veterinarians versus like medical doctors, because their patients can't talk to them and they have to make a lot of decisions. But it sounds like Washington State is a little ahead of the game with having you there, because you could have the best surgeon in the world in veterinary medicine, but somebody needs to help provide good emotional guidance.
Yeah. And I'm happy to do that. It is actually the most challenging pillar. They are professionals, and they are required to maintain a professional distance. And so there is some internal moral distress that often happens. Also, there's a challenge between what the client can actually reasonably do for their companion versus what the offerings are. And sometimes they have to do things that they would rather not, because this is what they can do based upon the resources of the client themselves. So there are lots of variety in what goes into that stress.
Pet Pals, we're speaking with Scott Campbell. He is a veterinary chaplain. He also heads up the nonprofit. It is called the American Association of Veterinary Chaplains. Please, after the show, visit aavchap.org. That sounds like alphabet soup, but it's good for your soul, too. We're going to learn a little bit more about how he's reaching out to pet sitters and boarding staffs and people that build a connection with your pet, and how we all handle this 5-letter word. Let me make sure, Grief. Yep, grief, with the good Scott, after we take this break. So sit, stay. We'll be right back.
Hey, have you heard? Four-Legged Life has a new digital newsletter. Here, let me show you how you get yourself subscribed. So you just type in Four-Legged Life, and that'll take you to the website. There we go. And this magic thing just appears, and you type in your email address. I'll use, let's see, how about coolestdogever@gmail.com. That's me. And then you just click on this thing here. There you go. It's the new digital newsletter from Four-Legged Life. Get subscribed today.
Welcome back to the Four-Legged Life Show. I'm your host, Arden Moore. I'm honored that our guest today is a man of compassion. He's got a big heart, and he's trying to help us all. Pets do a body good, and he is a veterinary chaplain. And we're talking about how we handle grief, pet grief. And for all of us, we've lost a good pet, but there's also this group of people who day in, day out, for years with your pet, have been walking them, have been playing with them at a doggy daycare, have been grooming them. And I'm speaking of pet professionals. So, Scott, you were at the National Association of Professional Pet Sitters Conference recently in Tempe, Arizona. And I was very excited because I'm like, ooh, they snagged a good one. This is a good topic. What brought you to that conference?
Well, as I've been doing my work, initially my focus in the animal care world has been on veterinarians and the healthcare team of hospitals.
Right.
But as I've done that, I've realized that the world is actually bigger than that. It includes shelter workers, rescue workers. It includes all these people that are caregivers to our interspecies web that don't necessarily have a place in the veterinary hospital, and yet they're part of the world that we serve. And so when I came across the call for this particular talk, it was like, wow, I had never thought about professional pet sitters, and yet it makes so much sense. And so I just thought it was a wonderful opportunity, and I'm so glad that I took advantage of it.
Well, all the pet sitters out there can say what I'm going to say. They understand. They build friendships with these clients' pets, and sometimes they even feel like they're an extended part of the family, maybe like an aunt or an uncle, and then the pet dies. And there are things to help people deal with grief from their pets, but then there's this awkward area. How do professionals like pet sitters or shelter workers, how do they show grief? Because it wasn't their pet, but they loved that pet.
Yeah, it's an interesting relationship, right? Because you're not just mechanics. You're not just construction workers laying fences and creating, okay, you're going to play in this area now. And you're actually interacting, which is a very compassionate and heart-opening activity. And so it makes perfect sense that you would develop relationships with these companions. Some of you spend more time with these companions than their people do.
Yeah.
And so it makes perfect sense that you would be really connected to them because you look forward to seeing them. They look forward to seeing you. And it's really a beautiful thing. So when it comes down the road to a time of loss, for that emptiness felt, that makes perfect sense.
So what are some do's and don'ts we can do? What can we say? What should we never say to someone that may have this connection, but it isn't their pet, but they're still obviously grieving? What would be some kind things that we could do to help that pet sitter, that shelter worker, that doggy daycare person who's for years have been seeing this dog or this cat and now they've passed on? How do you help them?
Yeah. So for them, it's really important that they acknowledge the pain.
Good.
It is real. It is to be validated, and to experience that pain demonstrates the level of connection that they've had with that particular companion. So to not have it actually kind of says something too. People actually respond differently too, right? There are people who are very expressive in their grief. There are also people who are very stoic in their grief, but it doesn't mean that they're not experiencing the pain. It's just they don't display it. So giving people the recognition that it's real, it's valid, and that it's perfectly natural that this is going to come in waves, that this is going to happen more than, it's not going to just be one and done, that something's going to happen 3 days from now that's going to trigger a memory and you're going to come to tears again, or you're going to get at least a lump in your throat.
And it's okay. But what about people who are awkward, Scott, and maybe say things like, well, it was just a dog, or this wasn't your dog, or you'll just get over it. Boy, that has to hurt.
Yeah, because what you're doing is you're actually invalidating the experience. You're invalidating the pain, and that leads to a disenfranchised grief, which is another thing that we sadly experience a lot of in this society, even with human death.
So define this, because disenfranchised grief, that's a new term to me. What does that mean?
Yeah, so disenfranchised grief is grief that you're experiencing, but then the world is telling you back that it's not valid. And so you have this internal conflict where it's like, okay, I'm experiencing this thing, but I'm being told that it's not real. And so what do I do with this thing that is tearing me apart? And so it adds another whole complex layer to the grief that they also have to wrestle with. So by validating the grief, telling them that it's perfectly understandable that they would feel this way, it sort of sheds that outer layer and allows them to really stay with the experience that they're having.
There's also a type of grief you pointed out it's called ambiguous grief, where a family had a ceremony, they said goodbye to their dog, and you've been the pet sitter for many years. You were never invited to that ceremony, or they just told you, oh, by the way, Gia died. Gia's gone. And then you're sitting there by yourself. So can you describe ambiguous grief and any tip on that?
Yeah, so ambiguous grief is where you start to wonder, did my participation even matter?
Yeah.
Am I in a situation where am I worthy to grieve over this? Was I really a part of the life such that I should be feeling this way? It's kind of an internal disenfranchisement. Where you sort of start to think, am I right? You're questioning yourself. Am I right for feeling this way? Did I have any part in the life such that I feel like I deserve to feel the grief? But ultimately, of course you do, because you're having a genuine felt experience. You had a relationship.
Yep. You talk about resilience. Can you offer a little insight into that? We want people to know that this is horrible what happened, but all of us are sentient beings. We don't live forever. How does resilience help maybe some of these folks?
Yeah, so resilience is hugely important because that's what allows us to keep going.
Okay.
And resilience isn't like being tough, bouncing back.
You don't want to be a Clint Eastwood? No?
Well, I think there are people that do, but that's another issue entirely. But I think what we're talking about here is actually being open to emotion. When we grieve, we're open to that emotion and we're experiencing it. And the question is, do we just pile it in and then try and close it off? It's just like, I don't like feeling this way anymore, so I'm just going to stuff it down. I'm just going to distract myself. I'm going to watch, I'm going to binge watch Game of Thrones or whatever. And I'm just going to tune out, or I'm going to get a gallon of ice cream or whatever people do, right? But that's not helping process the emotions that they've had. And so what happens is that it just sort of builds. And then as compassionate individuals, as people like professional pet sitters are, there will come a time when they need to open their hearts to be compassionate again. And they'll realize, oh, I'm just so full of emotion from everything else that I haven't worked on, that I haven't worked to release, that I don't have any place to add anymore.
Oh, okay.
And then they look at it as, well, I'm trying to be compassionate. I must have compassion fatigue. But what it really is that they're overloaded with past emotion. And so in gaining resilience, what we're really trying to do is process the emotions we have. Things like journaling, get it onto pen and paper in terms of what's going on, because you'll surprise yourself. It's like, okay, I feel awful. I don't know why I feel awful, so I'm just going to start writing.
So journaling's a good one. What would be another good exercise, maybe?
Yeah. Another one is, once you become aware of things, is just things like meditation. It actually is very useful to slow your mind down and just to allow things to be calm for a little while. And it doesn't have to be long. It could be 5 minutes. You could also do grounding exercises in reality. So take 2 or 3 minutes and just focus on each of your 5 senses and slow down and just notice, okay, these are a couple of things that I'm noticing in my vision. Oh, I hadn't noticed that blemish on the wall before, whatever. And then what are you hearing that you wouldn't normally hear? It's like, oh, I can actually hear a little bit of the air duct working in the background.
I like that.
Yeah. What are your felt sensations? Can you feel the floor supporting your feet or the chair supporting your backside? What's the temperature like? Is there a slight breeze? Can you feel that anywhere on your body? So just all those things are things that bring you right into the current time, in the present moment. And none of those things that you were wringing your hands about, thinking about the emotion, were actually going on while you were focusing on your 5 senses. That also has the ability to slow you down, and then you can go back and start to process those emotions again in a calm manner.
So your group is available for help. Are there any other resources you could offer where people can go for help these days if they're dealing with pet grief?
Yeah, so there are resources out there. There are resources in your community, and I would encourage you to look locally. There are actually human grief groups that will actually allow folks in who are grieving lost companions. So you just have to ask. But you can also check out the Unitarian Universalist Animal Ministry. I think once a month they have an online grief group that's free.
Nice.
And I believe the same thing is true for the Compassion Consortium.
Wow.
So I think those are both also options for that sort of thing.
Last question, Scott.
Okay.
How have companion animals, dog, cat, made you a better human?
I think people really talk down on the short lives of our companions. For many of them, some of course live very long, but for the common popular companions, they're relatively short lives. And as I look back over time, I think in some ways it's a blessing. Although it's been extremely painful to lose each and every one of them, the opportunity to open my door and my heart to another companion, which has its own completely unique personality. Each has taught me something different. Each has shown me love in different ways. And I have found that over time to just be a real blessing to have been able to share my life with so many different companions.
Well, I want to say amen, Scott. Amen.
Thanks so much for making our tails wag by watching this guest interview from Arden Moore's Four-Legged Life. Four-Legged Life. Make sure to subscribe so you're up to date with all of our Four-Legged Life content. Four-Legged Life. Four-Legged Life.